why we should have a supervisor that's trained in online and telephone work if we practice that way, Rory.
I do believe that supervision has become a lot more technical over the last few years. I speak as a supervisor myself. It is incumbent on me to keep my CPD up to scratch, to be just a little bit further ahead of the people I'm supervising, to be informed, because supervision is a collaborative endeavour where you're working with someone and you're trying to help support their practice. And then we had the pandemic, and there was a huge turn to working online, where before it had been a very niche activity. Now it's a standard offer for a lot of therapists. I was looking at a directory yesterday, and there were so many people who offered in the room and online. It's now become just a standard offer in the economy of counselling, which does pose the question: if you're offering online therapy as a therapist, you need supporting in every aspect of your practice with supervision. And is your supervisor informed? Are they informed about the online world? Do they know about how working online can be different to working in the room? And there are a few things that we might need to consider if we're supervising someone who works online. And that is things like maintaining therapeutic presence without cues, body language. If you're on the phone, it's impossible to see someone's bodily movements. And even on video link, usually people are seen from the waist up, aren't they? So again, it's very difficult to get a sense of the whole person. Things like managing silences. I was listening to someone on the phone the other day, a friend say, are you there? And I'm like, yeah. And, oh, I thought you'd gone. And it's one of those strange things that if you're in a room and you're listening intently and you're quiet, people can see that. But if you're on the phone, it gives that sense of, I wonder if they're still there. So you have to change the way you respond, a bit more nuanced. So if I'm on the phone nowadays, I go, which sounds a bit false, but it gives the person on the other end an indication you're still there. And also, I think the data protection piece. There's a lot of platforms out there where people can meet online. What due diligence does a therapist need to demonstrate to show that they're actually data compliant? You know, this is really about being competent in your practice, showing members of the public that you are doing due diligence. So I think it's essential nowadays, if you're working online, to have a online and telephone informed supervisor, someone who knows and is trained in it and understands the nuances of the online world.
Definitely. For this topic, it starts for me with the ethical framework. If you're a counsellor, psychotherapist, certainly in the United Kingdom, you're going to be working to an ethical framework. There are countries where maybe there isn't an ethical framework, but very often then you might look to a different country and their ethical framework. And if you look to your ethical framework around supervision, undoubtedly it's going to suggest that you choose a supervisor who understands the way that you work. And I'll give an example of that. If my client group was children and young people, and I had a supervisor who didn't have any formal training in working with children and young people, how is that supervisor going to help me navigate my practice? They have an area of information that is missing. So we need to look for a supervisor that understands how we work. When you're a student, it starts off with the modality. So while you're studying, if you're studying TA, then you're going to want a TA supervisor because it matches your modality. But after you graduate, you might go into a specialist area. You would expect that your supervisor would have formal training. And that's the important thing, not an idea of, but formal training within that area. Now, if you look to one example, the BACP ethical framework here in the United Kingdom, the BACP also have competences for supervisors. And within the competence for supervisors, it outlines very clearly that if you're working with a supervisee who is working in an online environment, that you as the supervisor should hold formal training in that area. And if you look to the curriculum that the BACP suggests for training supervisors, you've got supervision training, which is in the room what you need to know to be a supervisor and hold a supervisee. And then they have special interest areas or additional competences, which again carry a curriculum and a formal training route. And one of them is online and telephone working. So you train to be a supervisor, and then you also train in that additional area to hold the competences that are required to be able to help that supervisee navigate their practice within that area. You mentioned the history and why there's such an uptake of online or remote working, and COVID started it all off. And as a training provider, we put together a online and telephone training course for practitioners. Now, to date, over 40,000 practitioners have taken that training, graduated, and have a certificate in online and telephone counselling. They all need supervisors. I think it's one of the greatest growth areas in supervision. If I was a supervisor right now and I didn't have formal training in online and telephone counselling, it's the number one course I would be going to right now. And I know in our supervision training, Rory, that you built the curriculum to include the extra module of the recommended BACP curriculum that covers not only how to be a supervisor and hold somebody in a room, but also how to hold somebody in supervision online. And I think gone are the days that practitioners, and more particularly supervisors, would think, oh, you know what, there's not much of a difference. It's just over video, or it's just over a phone. I'm just going to take what I know and apply that via this platform. You can't do that. You're not doing best by your clients or by yourself for your practice. It does require formal training. And if you're working online, remotely, and your supervisor doesn't hold formal training in that area, how are they guiding your best practice? Because as you mentioned, Rory, there are many areas that differ when working online. There are psychological conditions that emerge only online, like disinhibition effects. It's really important that we know those, understand them, and that we get the guidance from our supervisors. So I think hopefully the tide has changed and it is more recognized now.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. We're moving into becoming 21st century therapists and 21st century supervisors. There's a lot of people who may have trained in the 2000s like I did, or received 20th century training, really need to think about the new ways of working, but also the research that underpins it. And one of the things that is growing and emerging is that we have to work within research. We have to consult research. And there's a massive amount of research on online and telephone counselling. And certainly the research that I've come across, I've used in my supervision practice to help supervisees understand the sometimes very subtle differences. Now, I'll give you one subtle difference. If you're working on the phone, you might want to think about making sure that your client has a picture of you. In other words, they know who you are. And it could be on your directory or on your website. The reason for that is that without any form of reference, clients may build a fantasy vision of you, and that can lead into fantasy transference. So I think it's very important that you have a visual picture of yourself. And obviously, for sight impaired or blind clients, that might be a different process. But little things like making sure that if you're working on the phone, that you're working with an adult, not a child. How do you know that the person you're working with is who they are? And that's especially important in things like child protection. So there's lots of areas where a supervisor can help guide someone's practice to encompass online and telephone work safely and ethically, and more important, confidently. I think you need to go in very well informed and very well supported. And I would suggest that if you're just starting in the online world, speak with your supervisor, get some plan in place, get some structure, and then come back and speak about that experience and how it develops, because it is a different way of working. And at the end of the day, we're in service of clients, the general public. We're responsible to them, and we must be competent.
Oh, yeah. Bravo, Rory. There's a handout for this. It's called Why Have an Online and Phone Therapy Informed Supervisors, written by our very own Rory Lees-Oakes. And you can get it for free. And if you're interested in training as an online and telephone informed therapist. Just go to Counselling Tutor and click on our products tab. You'll see our course there. It is 80 hours of training. It is exceptional training. And if you are interested in becoming a clinical supervisor and also offering supervision, not only in the room, but also to those who might practice online, we'll have a look at our clinical supervision training course, including online and telephone working. And that is all at counsellingtutor.com under the products tab.